Mom should have showed you in the kitchen. Apple pie. 6 of these. Brilliant tool, makes short work of everything when you're making apple pie. Get one. Takes the core out, peels the apple. I only need 6 for this pie, but I'm making extra. Maybe I'll make an extra pie, or maybe I'll make apple crisp or applesauce. Lots of things you can do. Ever hear of a pie crust promise? Easily made, easily broken. But I don't believe that, because pie crusts are not easily made, but they are easily broken. So you can see. Ooh, so you can see we have lots of apples. I can't see. Hang on. As you can see, we have lots of apples. They look shabby chic right now, but we will trim them up, make sure there aren't any seed particles, and add them to our bowl for our pie filling. Now you're going to take all those apples and you're going to cut them in half, and see, you can see the seeds there, and you want to make sure that those are out. So what I usually do is drop off the ones that don't have the seed pods, cut sort of around it, that way you're cutting it out. And just put it over here in my scrap pile. So, and you know, you can leave pieces of skin in if you so desire. I don't like pieces of skin in mine, so, and I'm not gonna pull the skin off of that. That's too much work. So that just goes in the compost, which all goes back to Mother Earth for all you people who think that I'm wasting food. Actually, the worms appreciate it. So basically just opening them up, see if there's any seeds, cut them into, I'd say, fourths, so half and half again. Decide if you want to put the work into it. I find it annoying, so if you have enough apples, just let it go. And do that for, I think it's six apples, 6 cups of apples. I'll check the recipe and get back to you. It is 6 cups of sliced apples, so, you know, figure it out. I usually start with 6 apples and go from there. If I need more apples, I add more apples. I use McIntosh mostly because they cook down really nice. Today I have Cortland's, so I don't really know how they'll cook down. I don't really care for al dente apple pie. Some people like when the apples maintain their rigidity. I'm not really a fan, but this recipe is actually my mother-in-law's, Dorothy Cordell, and she has a secret ingredient that really does kick up this apple pie. So if you stick with me, you will have the best apple pie for the holidays, and everyone will be asking you to bring it from this point on. Here's one where a lot of the peel was still left because it kind of jumped the apple peeler, which does happen if you have a soft apple, but never fear, just keep running it. And what you do is you just take your knife and you just follow around the apple, peel off the peeling. And like I said, if you like apple peel in your apple pie, just leave it on there and cut it up. But if you don't, it's easily remedied. Look at that. And just check for seeds, because the seed pod in an apple is is kind of rough. You know, you don't want that in there. It's like getting an eggshell in your cookie dough. You just don't want to have that happen if you can avoid it. Okay, so you can see I'm done cutting up all the apples. And I'm just going to measure out 6 cups. So if I can get 2 pies out of this, great. If not, then I will use the extra apples to make applesauce or an apple crisp, which is as simple, and I will do a YouTube on that as well, because that is a great side dish for any meal in the fall, winter. Definitely gives you, I mean, it could be a side dish, it also can be a dessert. So easy in the oven, comes out right after dinner's done, and boom, everyone's happy. Little vanilla applesauce, excuse me, little vanilla ice cream, and you're good to go. Alright, so the good news is I have enough for my pie. And this actually is 8 cups, but I'm using a deep dish pie pan, so I like 8 cups. I like a apple pie with a lot of fruit in it. Thought I could get 2 apple pies out of it, but I was overzealous. Even though I cut up like 12 apples, so I guess an apple is not a cup. So, I don't know. Always have enough apples on hand, I guess. But that's 8 cups or more of apples, and that's going to make a decent apple pie. But having said that, I'm probably going to have to increase my ingredients, especially the flour. I may double that ratio just so that I have enough sauce within my apple pie. So stay tuned. Okay, you can see like cabbaging over there. That's not what I'm making. That's just extra. Anyways. So when you're measuring out your brown sugar is always packed in the cup. You know, like white sugar, you just like sift. But brown sugar, I scoop into the bag, and I use the bag to press against the cup so my hands don't get sticky. Because you want to have it a packed cup. So this asks for 3/4 cup brown sugar. I'm going to do, well, I don't really need to double the ingredients. Here are the ingredients. So it's asking for 6 cups of apples, 1/4 cup flour, 1 teaspoon nutmeg, 3/4 cup brown sugar, 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon, and a dash of salt. And 1 tablespoon of butter. You just put bits of butter on top of your apples before you lay the pie crust top on. And this is the ingredient of speciality from Dottie Cordell. Drizzle of molasses, and that totally kicks up this recipe. So kudos to Dottie Cordell. And then and I will show you how to make the pie crust, but once you assemble it, then it's baked at 450 for 15 minutes. Then you reduce the temperature to 350 and you bake another 30 minutes. So there's much more to go on this. Stay tuned. For those of you who don't know what molasses is, because it is kind of a baking ingredient that's not used as readily, but this is what it looks like. It's in the market, and I use it for molasses crinkles, which are an outstanding cookie as well. It has magnesium in it. So ingredient, molasses. Alright, so I have all the ingredients assembled. First we'll go in 1/4 cup flour. I am using a 1/2 cup. I don't know if I'm going to use all of it right now, but I'm going to start by dusting it. Because what the flour does is it thickens up your sauce around the apple pie. And it's actually, I'm going to use the whole thing, because it really just thickens up the sauce for you, which is all the natural juices of the apples. And then we have 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg, but I doubled it, so I'm putting in 1/2 because I'm putting in 8 cups of apples. And then a 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon. So I have mixed in all the ingredients into my apple pie, or my apples. And there's one that has a little bit of skin, and I don't like the skin. So you just mix it, and you set it, and you forget it while you make your apple pie crust. And it's already starting to weep, the juices, and you'll have a nice, tasty set after. this is what I use for my apple pie recipe. It is my mother's, not exactly my mother's, but a duplicate copy of my mother's cookbook from 1967. And I use this apple pie recipe. It has standard pastry for 1 or 2 crust pie. I'm not doing 1 crust, but there that is. For 8 2 crust pie, or 8 inch, pardon me, or for a 9 inch 2 crust pie, and that's what I'm going to be using. I'm doing the deep dish, and that's why I'm using 8 cups of apples instead of 6 cups, because the deep dish is definitely, as described, deep. So you start off, and I will demonstrate all of this, by measuring the flour, and you will also put in the shortening in the bowl, and then you use that pastry blender, and that works awesome. You can also use 2 knives or a fork if you don't have one. They work just as well, and you're going to be just combining the flour with the shortening into pea-size pieces, and then you will add in the water as described. So for this one, it's 2 cups of flour, a teaspoon of salt, 2/3 cup of lard, because that's what they used to use it. I use the shortening, and a 1/4 cup of water. Depending on the temperature and the barometric pressure and all sorts of things, sometimes I have to use more water or less water, and that just becomes something that you feel after making and failing at pie crust. So easy made, easy broken pie crust promise? No, it's not easily made, but you can all do this because it is something that you physically can do, and the more you do it, the better you can get at it, and you'll have definitely the feel for it. So you pull it into a ball, you roll it out, and actually this one you do cut in half because you are making a top crust and a bottom crust, and I actually do 2/3 for the bottom and 1/3 for the top. Roll it out, place it in your pan, and then you're loaded up with your insides, and then you put the top crust on. So let's have at it. Okay, so we're starting the pie crust, and you're going to want to do 2 cups of flour, and I usually get the flour, and I use this item to scrape off so that it's even with the top of the cup. So I'm going to scrape that back into the container, which you can't see, but see how that's even now? So you're going to get 2 cups in there, all-purpose flour. You can use wheat flour if you want to. It's just going to give a different texture to your pie crust, but if that's what you want to do, you could do 1 cup of all-purpose and 1 cup of wheat flour. And then it's about 1 teaspoon of salt. You can measure it out. I just gauge because I've been baking a long time, but you can measure out a teaspoon of salt. I don't really like that much salt. I don't think it's fantastic for you, but I feel like it's important for some recipes. And then 2/3 cup of shortening. Now, I don't work for a Pampered Chef or anything, but I love this item for dry and solid measuring. So you just pack in how much you want, and this is great for peanut butter cookies too, but this is for shortening, which I'm using Crisco, and I've always used Crisco. It's excellent for my pie crust. So 2/3 plus 2 tablespoons. So I put it to the 2/3 mark, and then I pull it down just a little bit, and you know, I'll put on another plop of it because I think it just works. And then you just push it out, meaning if you have a little bit more c'est la vie, you can add more flour to it if your ratio isn't right, but it's just a couple extra tablespoons. Now, so then you have it like this. You can use this pastry item for mashing it. Sometimes that works good, and that's what it's designed for, blending your pastry blender. Or you can use 2 knives, and I'll show you how that works. Just one like this, back and forth. that works as well if you don't have a pastry blender. Or you can use a fork, which I kind of like because you kind of just mash down into the flour. I mean, the pastry blender works well, but I think the fork you have more control with. So you choose. Okay, so you want to have a 1/4 cup of cold water handy. Once you blend the flour with a Crisco till you get the pea-size particles. Basically, you just want to make sure all of that Crisco is blended into the flour. And it will make the next step a lot easier if you have a good blend. And the fork does work the best, I would say. I would say bypass the pastry blender for this recipe. Just use a fork. So I'm just pushing it into and turning it. So all of the pieces are small and you kind of get a little bit of squeeze like that. So then you're going to slowly add water. Not the whole, put about half in. Stir it around. Okay. And a little bit more. This is when you're going to start to get a feel for your pie crust. You're going to see that those pieces are sticking. It's getting a little harder to mix. Put in the last of the 1/4 cup. And like I said, depending on the weather or how much flour you've put in, you may have to add more water or less water. But you want it to get to this consistency. And you don't want to overwork it. So bring it together with your fingers. Play-Doh. Bring it together into a ball, but don't overwork it. And you're done. And this is what you're going to divide into thirds. 2/3 for the bottom, 1/3 for the top. Okay, for this recipe I'm using a deep dish pie pan, again from Pottery Barn, but it just so happens to be this is a 9-inch, but it's definitely a deep dish. A standard pie dish you're used to seeing is metal, and it's probably comes up to where that line is. So here we go. Alright, first you're going to want to put a towel over a cutting board, and I just pull it tight at the top and then bring the bottom end under this bottom and then pull that tight, and then just dust your towel with plenty of flour. You don't want your pie crust to stick. And it won't. You get it floured up good enough. You don't want to over flour anything because you're going to just have really tough crust. And again, that's a feel thing, but don't be afraid. Keep trying. Like with anything in life, you just want to keep trying. Alright, let's get our bowl. Try not to film everything that I shouldn't. Alright. So you can do this a couple different ways. You want to cut it in thirds. I mean, it's not rocket science, but I usually try to make an oblong. And just figure out what 2/3 are. Cut off one of them. Set that aside. Maybe I'll give it a little bit more. That's going to be the top crust, I think. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to give it a little bit more. And that's just from experience and feel. Alright, next thing you want to do is flour your rolling pin. I use a French rolling pin, but I have many different kinds. I don't know, I kind of like this one when I make pies. There's different ones I use when I make cookies. And you take your dough, and I do some of the work ahead of time. Press it out. Okay. I don't know if my filming is so good on this. I have it strapped to me. Tripod probably would have been better. But this way you'll get my perspective on rolling the dough. And maybe we'll try it a different way the next time. But I'm trying it this way. So you put your rolling pin, give it a little bit of dust, and you put your rolling pin in the center and you pull out. And you go back to center and go that way. And then go back to center and go that way. And you just keep rotating until you get it out wide enough to go into your deep dish. And you'll get some splitting, and like I said, don't cry over the splits. So you're going to see that your edges are rough, and that's okay. I've made it almost the size of my board, and I'm pretty confident that that's going to fill up my pie. But again, just work it. You'll see that your edges are a little thicker, and that's okay. Don't worry about it. Okay. What I like about this rolling pin is that you can use like the tip of it and roll things together. Like if you have a crack like that, you can just finger press it back together. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take the pin, we're going to pull the top over the pin, and I'm going to roll it back towards you. And it's going to break, and don't worry about it. See? Now it's all on this rolling pin. Alright, you put your pie tin down, or your pie, whatever you have, and you bring this up, and you roll it back over. Don't worry if it cracks. Not a deal. Let it sink in. Don't fret. Just let it sink in. Make sure you centered it so that you have equal coverage. And then once we put the filling in, put the top crust on, it'll be excellent. Alright, so your crust is in. You can press all these things. And when you put the top crust on, all this is going to meld together with the top crust. So you just kind of let it flop over. If it's really long, you can cut it off. So it's all about the same. But you do want an edge to it. So you could take maybe like some from this side, put it over to this side. And currently this pie crust is perfect. I mean, it's pliable, it's not dry. Like sometimes I'll make the pie crust and it's dry and it's just pretty much cracking everywhere and falling apart. And I've baked a pie with that. It still comes out good, but you want to just make sure you don't have any cracks in the bottom when you make an apple pie. Some pie crust, like if you were making a lemon meringue pie, you would make your pie crust first, I think. Yes. And then you would put your filling in, and don't quote me on that. But some pie crusts you make prior to putting your custard in. So this one we're just going to dump in the apple stuff. So just a second and I'll grab that. Okay, so we have, see how that's gotten nice and juicy. We'll dump in all of our apple filling into our shell. And being a deep dish pie crust, or pie, it's awesome if it piles right up. The thing is, it's gonna cook down quite a bit. In fact, when we pull this out of the oven, you will be surprised to see how it goes down. Alright, and so I don't forget probably going to put the bits of butter on top, which are a couple, like 2 tablespoons of butter. You break it up on top, and then you take that molasses syrup and you drizzle across the top. So let's get that. I'm just doing this, you know, you don't have to measure. It's about 2 tablespoons. I just take a spoon and I break off a couple pieces of butter, put it on the top. It adds flavor and richness to the pie. So that's all you do. And then you take your molasses syrup. Remember we talked about this? Grandma's molasses. And let me get this open. Hang on. Okay, so you have your molasses. You can take the same spoon, just dunk it in the jar, and just drizzle on your pie. Just like that. Feel like Bob Ross. Just like that. Isn't that beautiful? Happy little pie. Thank you, Dorothy Cordell. And you'll be amazed at what flavor pop that gives it. If you don't like the smell, if you don't like molasses, then don't put it on. It's perfectly fine without it. This is just what I call the secret ingredient. Don't tell my mother-in-law I told you. It's okay, she doesn't use YouTube or have the internet, so we're all good. All right. So now we'll get ready to put the top crust on. Okay, now we have our third piece of pie crust left, and we're going to roll this out and we'll lay it on top of the pie, and I'll show you how to crimp and put it together. Okay, so now we're going to do the top crust. That's the third of the pastry dough that I have left. So same thing, you just dust it with flour, both sides, because you don't want it to stick to your towel. And I get it ready first by making it into a circle, so you can totally do that. Press it out, and again, start from the center and roll out. Go back to the center, roll out. Change directions, roll out. And you're putting a little bit of pressure, not too much, or you're going to stick to it. And you can dust again, dust your pin. Once you get good at it, I mean, you can definitely change directions if you want to repair your cracks. But once you get good at it, it becomes easier. And you're controlling the dough. And you just want to get it out far enough. And see, we have a crack there. Don't worry about it, because we can push that back together when we put it on the pie. And I've had pie crust completely fall apart for the top part too. But it usually tastes good once you get in the oven. And everything is repairable. Repairable. Okay. Alright, so same thing, put your rolling pin down, take the corner, the edge of it, and roll it onto your pin. Now, I'm going to tell you sometimes it's going to stick to here if you didn't get enough flour on there, but for the most part it rolls up like that. Okay, so then basically you line up the bottom edge and you roll it back over your pie. And if you don't quite make the edge, don't panic. You can take your overlap, rip it off, bring it over to this side. And you're going to have to cut holes in your pie anyway, so if it tears a little bit, don't panic. So see how much overhang we have? You can tear off a little bit of that and bring it over to the side. You just have to not panic and be resourceful. So what I do is I take the edge and I fold both layers under. So it's taking the edge and fold it under. Kind of give it a little pinch. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. So take the edge, fold it under, and here's the handle part, so you're just going to come in a little bit more. But you have to be able to pull it out of the oven. Just keep going around. Now there's many different ways you can decorate your pie crust, and if you're creative, go for it. I mean, there's a lot of ideas on Pinterest. I follow a couple people on Instagram who do wonderful designs with pie crust. In fact, her entire Instagram is pie crusts. Her name escapes me right now, but easily found. You just search pie crust. And this is a little lame, so I'm just going to tuck it in there. All right. Okay, so to crimp the pie crust, it's your hand in a fist sort of with your thumb. And you just go to the edge of the pie and put your knuckle against the edge of the pie crust and take your thumb and pinch and twist. And go one step forward, pinch and twist. Pinch, twist, pinch, twist. And you do that all the way around the pie crust. And sometimes they come out really nice, and sometimes they break, but it's a nice way of connecting the top to the bottom. You can use a fork too and just press a fork pattern all the way around it. I like the look of this, and I always use it. So there you go, and then you can take your knife, and you have to put in escape holes for the steam, especially with an apple pie. And you can make designs on it. You can get super clever with this part too. And after this, I do a milk wash and put cinnamon sugar over the top of it before I pop it in the oven. So I'll do that and show you what it looks like. Okay, milk wash. You just take a pastry brush and some milk. You don't want it soggy. You're just gonna gently wash the top and the edges with milk, which is essentially just moistening your dough so that it will accept the cinnamon. You don't have to do this. You can pop it in the oven just as is and it will bake up fine. This does give a nice golden hue to your crust, and I like the extra cinnamon sugar flavor, and so does my family. So I do it, and this is also part of Dottie Cordell's recipe. So to keep true to the recipe, I follow what Dottie does. There you go. If you have any puddles, just brush them around. And if you don't like milk, you can use egg. If you have a milk allergy, use egg. You can also use olive oil, I don't know. And then you take your cinnamon sugar, which mine is pre-mixed, and mine isn't so great today. It looks like it's more cinnamon, but there's sugar in there. And then you're done. And so then you pop it in your 450 degree oven, and hang on a second. 450 degree, nope, wrong recipe. Hit this stop. Okay, so then you're going to put in your oven for 450 degrees for 15 minutes, 450 Fahrenheit. And then after 15 minutes, reduce the temperature to 350 for 30 minutes. And by then, this will be bubbling and it will look super great. And if you feel like the edges are getting too dark, you can tint them with a little bit of tin foil. I don't do that. It comes out perfect every time, but it depends on how your oven works. Okay, so I'll show you the finished product in a little while, 45 minutes. There you go, we've got a nice bubble on it. It's done, nothing's burnt. Let it cool for about a half hour and serve with ice cream.